Leovigild didn't just rule Visigothic Spania, he reshaped it. From conquering regions to crushing rebellions, his reign marked the turning point that built the Visigothic Kingdom of Toledo. But what drove his numerous campaigns of conquest across the Iberian Peninsula? Or a father to go to war against his own son? I'm David Cott, host of New History of Spain, and in episode 16 we will dive into the remarkable reign of Leovigild and take a look at the economy of Visigothic Iberia. Liuva and Leovigild. In episode 15, Byzantine Spania and Visigothic society, we left off with the death of Hermenegild and the election of Liuva I as king of the Goths. After a 5-month period without a king, in late 567, the Gothic magnates chose the Duke of Septimania as a consensus candidate to prevent conflict among factions fighting for power. This choice brought stability and helped secure the loyalty of notable families in Septimania to defend the kingdom from the Franks. Septimania, the Goths' last territory in what is now southern France, remained vital for the kingdom. Liuva and his brother Leovigild were likely sons of the Ostrogothic general Liuberid, who had settled in Septimania under King Theodoric the Great. Liuva took the throne during a period of weakness for the Visigoths. At that time, Spania, aka the Iberian Peninsula, was politically fragmented, with various states and local powers challenging Gothic rule. The Merovingian Franks even tried to exploit this by launching a campaign into Septimania. In response, Liuva made a bold decision for the kingdom's future. Like some Roman emperors before him, he appointed his younger brother Leovigild as co-ruler, giving him control over the Visigothic lands in Iberia. Remember that since King Theodes, these were the core territories of the kingdom. To secure the loyalty of the aristocratic faction that had supported King Hermenegild, Leovigild married Goiswintha, Hermenegild's widow, a queen with a strong influence, especially since she likely controlled the Visigothic royal treasury. Goiswintha may have belonged to the Balti dynasty that ruled the Visigoths until Alaric II, but whether true or not, she certainly came from one of the most powerful Gothic families. Through her, Leovigild gained connections with the Merovingian Franks of Austrasia and Neustria, thanks to her daughter's marriages. These ties helped maintain peace along the borders. Historian José Sotochica describes Liuva as a somewhat unenergetic king, though he could equally be seen as a Jon Snow type of leader, a man of action, uninterested in courtly politicking. Liuva preferred to return to Septimania, defending its borders against the Franks, who soon stopped their attacks to address conflicts elsewhere. Liuva ruled Gothic Gaul peacefully until his death in 573, while his brother Leovigild would go on to achieve lasting fame through his conquests and the building of the Visigothic kingdom in Spania. The motives behind Leovigild's conquests. Leovigild's reign is among the most significant in Visigothic and Iberian history. When he took the throne, the kingdom faced enemies on all sides. The north was outside of Gothic control, the independent Suevic kingdom lay in the northwest, Frankish incursions threatened the borders, and the Eastern Romans and some autonomous powers held the south. Thus, the best way to ensure the kingdom's survival was through military campaigns against its enemies, as the Visigothic kingdom of Spania would be forged in blood. By doing so, Leovigild could expand his domains and solidify his dynasty's power. 6th century Europe was a world of powerful secular and religious leaders, so Leovigild needed the support of the Hispano-Gothic aristocracy. He rewarded allies with land and wealth and punished his opponents to secure his role. Spanish nationalists say that Leovigild sought to unify the Iberian Peninsula under Visigothic rule. This idea is inspired by Isidore of Seville's view of the Goths as predestined to rule Spania, a perspective used to justify efforts to expel the Byzantines from southeastern Iberia. Whether the Goths truly aspire to control the entire peninsula remains uncertain, but if they did, they never fully succeeded. Historian Pablo Poveda Arias, whom I interviewed on the Spanish version of this show, suggests that if the Goths had such ambitions, it's surprising that Recared, Leovigild's son, didn't pursue military campaigns as his father did and instead took a more defensive approach. More importantly, as we will see, Leovigild often shifted his focus from one region to another without fully conquering any single area. As we have seen in past episodes, barbarian kings relied heavily on military success to gain legitimacy and consolidate their authority. Unlike Alaric II or Amalaric, Leovigild proved successful as a warrior king. Victorious campaigns allowed monarchs to consolidate power against potential rivals, and magnates who joined these voluntary offensive campaigns gained rewards of land and spoils. Thus, political and economic gain for a few was the driver for Leovigild's campaigns, while ideological or collective interests were secondary. Gothic campaigns in the south. Leovigild's first campaign targeted the Byzantines in 570. As you may recall from the last episode, the Byzantines had established the province of Spania along Iberia's southern coast. This campaign took place as the Lombards were conquering Byzantine territories in Italy, and Byzantine forces faced defeats against Berber chieftains in North Africa. However, Leovigild's mission here wasn't to take new territory, but to raid and devastate the countryside in areas like Baza, the Vega of Granada, Antequera, and Malaga. The following year, the Visigoths managed to capture the stronghold of Medina Sidonia after a Byzantine soldier betrayed his side, though the city returned to Byzantine control a few years later. Still, Medina Sidonia's capture was a strategic victory, threatening Byzantine control over the Strait of Gibraltar. However, before advancing further against the Byzantines, Leovigild needed to strengthen his hold over Baetica, the southern province of the peninsula. He acted quickly, launching a surprise night assault on Córdoba, a city that had been enjoying a period of local autonomy, resulting in a Gothic victory and the execution of its defenders. Following Córdoba's capture, several fortifications in the Guadalquivir Valley also fell. Chronicler John of Viclaro noted that these were defended by peasants armed by their landlords. The massacre of these militias sent a clear message to other local rulers who refused to recognize Gothic authority. The Goths would come, and it was their choice whether there would be bloodshed. Campaigns against autonomous regions. In 573, Leovigild shifted his campaigns to the northwest. This was a chance to reassert Gothic hegemony over Spania in response to actions from the Suevi, led by King Miro, who had recently attacked central Asturias and parts of León. These areas were not under Gothic or Suevic control, and Leovigild took advantage by raiding the region around Zamora, known in the sources as Savaria, and capturing its Castella. In episode 14, The Darkest Days of Visigothic Rule in Iberia, we discussed this Castella, a small, well-defended settlement on high ground. The following year, Leovigild launched a new campaign against Cantabria, which at that time included today's Cantabria, Burgos, Palencia, and parts of La Rioja and Álava. This was a large area in the north, and he didn't conquer it all. I recommend watching the YouTube video to better understand all the locations I'm mentioning. In the life of Saint Emilian, written by Braulio of Zaragoza a few decades later, the author mentions a senate governing Cantabria. Some historians, like José Sotochica, interpret this as a possible independent state formed by local Hispano-Roman elites. However, it's more likely this senate was just a local city council rather than a governing body of a large territory. In fact, near Logroño, the capital of La Rioja, there was an ancient city called Cantabria, so it was probably making a reference to that city. In any case, Leovigild's forces conquered much of ancient Cantabria, stopping at the Cantabrian Mountains. They also captured Amaya in Burgos, which became the administrative capital of Gothic Cantabria. Ironically, the modern province of Cantabria, farther north, remained free from Gothic control and stateless. Yet, Leovigild's main military goal was successful, securing routes between the Ebro Valley and the northern Meseta. In 575, he focused on another autonomous region contested by the Suevi and the Goths, the Aregensian Mountains, in what is now Ourense, in Galicia. Here he captured a prominent lord who had begun showing allegiance to the Suevi and seized his wealth. Interestingly, some sources from Leovigild's campaigns mention groups and places that only appear in this context and never again, like the Sapos of Savaria in the Zamora and Salamanca areas, the Rucones in Asturias, or the Aregensian Mountains. The chronicles present them as the other, people seen as opponents to the gods without much detail or explanation. Sometimes these names seem to echo pre-Roman groups, but this may have been a literary device, showing these groups as resisting Visigothic rule, even though they may have not used these names themselves. So it is a mistake to think of them as ancient tribes that survived quietly under Roman rule, only to appear then as rebels. With this clarified, in 576, Leovigild launched an attack on the kingdom of the Suevi. The campaign ended quickly when King Miro asked for peace, offering to become a vassal, much like the earlier relationship between King Theodoric II and the Suevic Remisman. This would mean the Suevi had to pay tribute to Toledo and respond to any calls to arms. Leovigild agreed, as he wasn't aiming to unify all of Hispania, despite later claims by Spanish nationalists. His campaigns were predatory and aimed to enrich himself and his followers, not to impose direct rule everywhere. By collecting tribute from the Suevi, Leovigild avoided the challenges and costs of directly ruling Galicia. This also spared him from dividing water spoils among his followers. His next target was to the south, the region of Orospeda in present-day Jaén and Albacete. This region, like Savaria and the Aregensian Mountains, was relatively isolated and acted as a buffer zone between Byzantine Hispania and the Visigothic kingdom. Leovigild conquered Orospeda in a brutal campaign, and the Visigothic army returned the following year to suppress a revolt there. Building the Visigothic kingdom of Toledo. After 7 years of campaigns across Hispania, there was finally a year of peace. By this time, Leovigild had strengthened and consolidated the Visigothic kingdom, now with fewer enemies than when he began his reign. As I mentioned before, Leovigild's kingdom was built through both negotiation and force, including political purges and military campaigns across the Iberian Peninsula. Along with his military successes, Leovigild also reorganized and developed the state through administrative and legal reforms. Before his rule, the Visigothic kingdom mainly consisted of the king, the royal treasury, and the army. But Leovigild transformed it into a more structured state with real institutions, closer to what we think of as states today. He wanted a centralized, strong kingdom, inspired by Roman political models. And to achieve this, he had to face both external enemies and internal challenges. Like King Chindasuin did decades later, Leovigild reduced the power of the aristocracy by executing, exiling, or confiscating the wealth of those who opposed him. This strengthened the royal treasury and removed possible threats to his rule, further increasing his power compared to other Gothic nobles. He also used ceremonies and protocols to elevate the image of the king, likely inspired by Roman court traditions. In 573, to solidify his dynasty, he made his sons Hermenegild and Recared co-rulers. They were born from a marriage prior to that with Goiswintha, and these were steps to establish a hereditary monarchy for the Visigothic kingdom. Through his military campaigns and the wealth he took from his enemies, the kingdom's finances were thriving. This allowed Leovigild to mint gold coins that bore no mention of the Roman emperor in Constantinople, reasserting the independence of the Visigothic kingdom. He exercised another typically imperial prerogative by founding a new city in the province of Guadalajara, Recopolis, named after his son Recared. All these actions showed Leovigild's intent to present himself as a legitimate successor to Roman tradition. On the administrative side, Leovigild copied the Byzantine Empire's practice of dividing the territory into provinces governed by dukes with military authority and counts with civil authority who oversaw cities and nearby areas. To unify the kingdom further, he lifted the ban on marriages between Goths and Hispano-Romans, and may have introduced a legal code known as the Code of Leovigild, applied to all of his subjects. These were crucial steps toward creating an independent Visigothic monarchy based in Spania. Causes of Hermenegild's rebellion. Leovigild's reign wasn't free from complications, especially due to a family drama worthy of Game of Thrones. In 579, his eldest son, Hermenegild, married Ingund, a Catholic princess from the Frankish kingdom of Austrasia. Ingund, the daughter of King Sigebert, was also the granddaughter of Leovigild's wife, Goiswintha. Therefore, this marriage served two purposes: internationally to strengthen ties with Austrasia, and domestically to consolidate the alliance between the factions represented by Leovigild and Goiswintha. On paper, the marriage seemed like a good idea, but it actually sparked a serious internal crisis. We have two notably different accounts explaining why Hermenegild eventually rebelled. One from the Frankish historian Gregory of Tours, and another from John of Viclaro, the Bishop of Girona. Gregory claims Queen Goiswintha beat her granddaughter Ingund for refusing to convert to Arianism. As usual, the Frankish chronicler portrayed Gothic religious fanaticism as a source of conflict. However, this seems unlikely. In contrast, John of Viclaro suggests that Goiswintha encouraged the rebellion against her husband. One explanation for this tension could be that Leovigild arranged another marriage between his younger son, Recared, and the daughter of King Chilperic of Neustria, another of Goiswintha's granddaughters. Since Chilperic had previously murdered Goiswintha's daughter to marry his lover, this alliance infuriated Goiswintha, who, along with the political faction she had led since Athanagild's reign, seems to have pushed Hermenegild into rebellion. I say seems because it's strange that if Goiswintha did play an active role in the rebellion, she doesn't appear to have been punished, and she is often depicted as a fervent supporter of Arianism. Did Goiswintha really instigate Hermenegild's rebellion? Did Hermenegild use the religious justification from the beginning? Or did he adopt Catholicism and this narrative later, possibly after losing Goiswintha's support? These questions are hard to answer with the limited information we have. In any case, Leovigild sent Hermenegild and Ingund to Seville to govern the Visigothic-controlled lands of Baetica. Some see this as compensation for Leovigild's apparent favoritism toward his younger son Recared, shown by founding the city of Recopolis in his honor in 578. Regardless of whether there was rivalry between the brothers, one thing is certain: Leovigild made a clear mistake in no doubting Hermenegild's loyalty and giving him authority far from Toledo. Seville was home to the powerful Bishop Leander, brother of Isidore of Seville. There was also a secular elite and clergy resistant to Leovigild's centralizing policies. This opposition extended across Baetica, a wealthy region but one still on the margins of the Visigothic kingdom. The southern landowners held almost as much power as the Goths, and beyond aiming for local rule, they could also align themselves with the Byzantine Empire. Influenced by his wife Ingund and Bishop Leander, Hermenegild converted to Catholicism. This move was intended to help him win the Catholic Church's support, cast his rebellion as a religious cause, and rally the Hispano-Roman elite. Hermenegild gained support from Merida and much of Lusitania, and on the international front, he sought assistance from the Byzantine Empire, the Suevi, and the Franks of Austrasia and Burgundy. Hermenegild was willing to do anything to seize power, even allying with foreign enemies who wanted the Visigothic kingdom to remain weak. After building a base of support, Hermenegild declared himself king in 580, and Catholic supporters framed his rebellion as a fight for religious freedom against persecution. This was just propaganda. Catholic bishops and barbarian kings often cooperated, and conflicts with the clergy were politically motivated. Of course, Hermenegild couldn't just say he rebelled because he wanted to rule or prevent Recared from becoming the next king. A son against a father. Hermenegild's rebellion was neither a religious war between Catholics and Arians, nor an ethnic conflict between Goths and Hispano-Romans. It was simply a power struggle. Local interests from the magnates of Baetica and Lusitania, as well as issues across the kingdom and international factors, all shaped this political rebellion. Strangely though, Leovigild didn't respond immediately, and there is no record of a military response for at least a year. Why didn't Leovigild act sooner? Well, he didn't have a standing army ready to deploy. Although he had soldiers stationed in garrisons, some may have joined Hermenegild, limiting Leovigild's ability to act. Raising an army required pulling soldiers from garrisons, risking local uprisings, or seeking help from loyal Goths, Hispano-Romans, and Gallo-Romans who could provide serfs and slaves to assist. So first, Leovigild had to secure loyalty at home, address the religious issue, and contain the rebellion to prevent foreign involvement. In 580, Leovigild called a council of Arian bishops in Toledo where they worked to reduce theological differences between Nicene Christianity and Arianism. This compromise, a sort of almost Catholic version of Arianism, encouraged conversion and even included bribes to win over bishops. Catholic bishops, like the one from Zaragoza, joined this initiative to unite the Hispanian, Gallic, and Gothic populations under a state religion and a church hierarchy loyal to the king. When these measures weren't enough, Leovigild wasn't afraid to use force, expelling bishops from their positions and confiscating the property of opponents. For example, he placed the Arian bishop Suna and a Papal Catholic bishop in charge of Merida, while exiling the Catholic bishop Masona, who supported Hermenegild. These actions allowed Leovigild to assert more control over Merida, one of the most important cities in Spania at the time. All these purges fueled Hermenegild's propaganda, though they were just political struggles disguised as religious conflicts. The chronicler John of Viclaro mentions no military battles between Leovigild and Hermenegild in the south from 580 to 582. However, an inscription found in Alcalá de Guadaira, near Seville, reads, quote, "In the second year of our Lord Hermenegild, whom his father, the Lord King Leovigild, pursues." End quote. This suggests that there were minor conflicts in Baetica and Lusitania, or may refer to Leovigild's 581 campaign against Vasconia, likely related to Hermenegild's rebellion. Otherwise, it's hard to explain how Leovigild could have had time to attack the north while facing a civil war in the south. The campaign against the Vascons, who possibly supported Hermenegild, ended in victory with the help of Frankish king Chilperic of Neustria from the other side of the Pyrenees. The conquest of Merida dealt a major blow to Hermenegild and paved the way to conquer the center of the rebellion, Seville. The kingdoms of Austrasia and Burgundy were occupied with other wars and couldn't help Hermenegild. But the Byzantine Empire, after victories in Africa, was capable of sending reinforcements to Spania. The end of Hermenegild's rebellion. Knowing the Eastern Roman Empire was a threat, Leovigild launched a final attack on Seville, besieging the city with all his forces. Hermenegild was desperate, as none of the foreign powers that had promised him support showed up. There are mixed accounts about whether King Miro of the Kingdom of the Suevi initially supported Hermenegild's rebellion. Some sources say he did, but later had to surrender in 583, renew his loyalty to Leovigild, and even join him against Hermenegild. Others suggest Miro had stayed loyal to Leovigild throughout. The siege of Seville dragged on for a year, and Hermenegild's position became unsustainable. Finally, he secretly abandoned Seville and fled to Córdoba, where he hoped to meet with Byzantine reinforcements. However, his rebellion was doomed when the Byzantine army betrayed him in early 585. They took Hermenegild's wife and son as hostages, brought them to Constantinople, and withdrew their troops from the Visigothic kingdom. But why did they withdraw? It appears that along with troops from the Byzantine province of Hispania, reinforcements had arrived from Africa, so they had gathered a formidable force. Leovigild managed to persuade the Byzantines to leave by returning some previously conquered towns, like Medina Sidonia, and giving them a bribe of 30,000 gold coins. Since the empire was never fully invested in Hermenegild's rebellion, this was a good enough deal to make them leave. Meanwhile, several Catholic bishops who had supported Hermenegild were allowed to return to their episcopal sees. This could be seen as a failure of Leovigild's religious policies or as proof of his political skill, as he turned former enemies into allies. With no support left, Hermenegild took refuge in a church in Córdoba, where soldiers could not enter to arrest him due to its sacred status. Leovigild sent Recared to negotiate his surrender. It seems that Leovigild may have promised Hermenegild that he wouldn't be executed if he surrendered. So Hermenegild agreed and was exiled to Valencia. But the family drama didn't end there, as Hermenegild was later transferred to a prison in Tarragona, where he was killed. It's unclear whether this was ordered by his father, his brother, or someone else acting on his own, though it's unlikely it happened without approval. The lesson here: don't trust every promise, even those coming from your family. The Visigothic conquest of the Suevic kingdom. With Hermenegild's rebellion over, did the long-awaited peace finally arrive? Of course not. The king of the Suevi, Miro, died on his return to Galicia, and his son, Eboric, took the throne. However, part of the Suevic aristocracy opposed renewing their vassalage to the Visigoths. As a result, a relative named Audeca overthrew Eboric, tonsured him, and confined him to a monastery, which disqualified him from ruling ever again. This gave Leovigild a perfect reason to start his conquest of the kingdom of the Suevi. He wouldn't allow another kingdom to challenge or rival the Visigoths in Iberia. Though it will be challenging and costly, bringing the Suevic kingdom under Visigothic rule will ensure their tribute flowed to Toledo. The French of Burgundy also took advantage of the situation created by Hermenegild's rebellion to attack Septimania. They likely attempted to drive the Goths out of Gaul for good. Recared, Leovigild's heir, led the Gothic forces to repel the attack, and the Frankish fleet sent to support the Suevi was defeated. Divided between those who supported joining the Visigothic kingdom and those who opposed it, the Suevi faced a war they couldn't win. The Suevi were quickly defeated, and the royal treasury was absorbed into the Visigothic treasury. With this, the Visigothic kingdom annexed Galicia, and the Suevi disappeared from history as an independent nation. A magnate named Malaric refused to accept defeat and took up arms, but his revolt was crushed. If you would like a comprehensive political history of the Suevi, watch my video History of the Kingdom of the Suevi on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe there for more content beyond this chronological series. After this conquest, only the Byzantine province of Spania remained under foreign control, while the northern regions from central Asturias to Navarre remained without state rule. Shortly after these major victories, King Leovigild died in 586, and his son Recared took the throne without any initial opposition. Many consider Leovigild the greatest king of Visigothic Spania. He united much of the Iberian Peninsula and worked to strengthen the Visigothic kingdom. His reign marked a turning point in Visigothic history, reversing the kingdom's decline and firmly establishing the Visigothic kingdom of Toledo through his military campaigns and smart political moves. The economy of the Visigothic kingdom. I will cover Recared's reign in the next episode, but today let's focus on the economy of the Visigothic kingdom. As in any pre-industrial society, the primary sector was by far the most important. The Visigoths didn't bring changes to farming or diet in Spania. Most land was used to grow wheat and barley, with vineyards and olive groves in certain areas. Land was farmed around villages, and much of it was owned by wealthy landowners. As we saw in the previous episode, few people were free landowners, and most land was worked by serfs, freedmen, and slaves. Famine was a constant risk due to frequent droughts, floods, and locust plagues that could ruin crops. This was worsened by the fact that many parts of Iberia were poorly suited for certain crops, especially given the agricultural techniques inherited from the late Roman Empire. Epidemics like the plague of Justinian and the destruction caused by wars only added to the economic and social challenges. Archaeologist Gisela Ripoll found signs of these hardships in tombs from the period, noting, quote, "Analysis of tombs reveals nutritional deficiencies, lack of essential vitamins, pathological diseases, a complete lack of hygiene, bone weaknesses, difficulty in walking, and issues with standing upright." End quote. Herding animals in valleys and mountains was common, and the most frequently raised animals were pigs, sheep, goats, and cattle. Spania was still known for horse breeding, and donkeys, mules, and poultry were also raised. Fishing remained important, along with the industries of salted fish and purple dye. Finally, there was the Visigothic era mines. Mining for iron, mercury, and construction materials was at much lower levels than during the Roman Empire's peak. I will talk more about taxes in the next episode, but for now it's worth noting that few coins were minted or circulated because the Visigothic state had limited tax collecting ability, and the economy was mostly self-sufficient on a local level, with minimal trade on a regional or international level. Most trade took place in cities where people exchanged agricultural surpluses, manufactured goods, and luxury imports. In rural areas, bartering was the main method of exchange. Merchants from Greece, Syria, and Egypt controlled international trade and set up communities in ports like Barcelona and Seville, as well as in key inland cities like Mérida and Toledo. However, international trade was very limited, usually restricted to luxury goods for the kingdom's elites. From the East and North Africa, the Visigothic kingdom imported species, silk, perfumes, incense, ivory, and fine metalworking, while exporting olive oil, wine, salt, the ancient fish sauce known as garum, and the famous leather from Cordoba. There was also trade with the Merovingian Franks, exchanging Frankish grains for iron, gold, salted fish, and leather. As for manufacturing, most people used everyday items like pottery, textiles, and farming tools, often making these items themselves. Fine metalwork was rare and mostly restricted to the ruling class. Overall, the Visigothic economy was in pretty bad shape, but the same can be said about other economies in the post-Roman world. Unlike the Roman Empire at its height, the Visigothic economy was more rural and self-sufficient, with less specialization and fewer goods produced for trade. Wealth was lower than in Roman times, and famines, plagues, and epidemics were constant threats. It wasn't an easy time to live, but that has often been the case throughout history. Wouldn't you agree?
The verdict!
As in the previous episode, I will ask some questions in today's verdict about Leovigild's reign. First, what do you think motivated Leovigild's conquests? Were they more about strengthening his political and economic power, or did ideology play a role too? What is your view of the Suevic kingdom now that we have covered its history? And finally, how will you assess Leovigild's reign overall? Leave your answers in the comment section. And with that, the verdict ends. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe to New History of Spain on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, if you haven't already. If you would like to support my work, you can join my Patreon at patreon.com/newhistoryspain to get early access, exclusive merchandise, and other perks. or get a 1-month early access subscription on Apple Podcasts. In the next episode, I will talk about Recared's reign, the Visigoths' conversion to Catholicism, and the role of the Catholic Church, administration, and taxes in the Visigothic era. Thanks for listening, and see you next time!